Low back strength doesn't equal safety, it doesn't equal pain-free, and it doesn't minimize risk of injury. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is go through how to build a lower back. If you get to the end of this tutorial and you like what you hear and you want to rebuild your lower back in the way that I'm describing in this tutorial, please do click the link below and go through to my How to Build Low Back Strength Endurance 12-week online program. Component number one, and this isn't necessarily in a particular order, but what I'm talking about early in this tutorial are the first components that you need to work on. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be doing it section by section. So component number one is stability. We want to have a stable spine, we want to have stable hips, and we want to have stable shoulders. If we can get stability through that whole system, then what's going to happen is we're going to set the platform and set the foundation for the other components to build on top. So how do we do that? Well, there are many different exercises that can do it. One of the exercises that I'd use is the bird dog. It's a common exercise that I've talked about in the past. I've used it in a lot of videos. It's one of my fundamental exercises, and what I'm going to do now is explain why. So the bird dog as an exercise is where we come down onto all fours and we come into this position. We can hold, so we can build the endurance with it, or we can go through a set of reps. Now, what's important whilst performing these reps, and what I'd recommend and how the program works, is we go down into a bird dog, and to start with, we hold the position. So what we are looking for is the stability. Now, what does the stability mean? What does that look like? Basically, it's level hips and shoulders. So what we don't want is we don't want to be lifting up and then wobbling from side to side, because that shows there's a degree of instability through the hip, through the spine and through the shoulders. So what we need to be able to do first is, first of all, get that level. That's kind of goal number one. So we come into this position, we lift up, and we're able to hold here. Now we can make it more unstable just very simply by coming in to a more narrow stance. So I started wide like this with a wider base, then you can make it a little bit harder by coming into this position. But the goal for all of it is to maintain level hips and level shoulders. Why is that why is that stability? Because the opposing muscles, when you lift an arm and a leg up, the opposing muscles, some have to heighten and some will reduce. And what you want is that to be balanced. So when we're lifting up, when the hips and shoulders are level, that's showing that there is balance between them. When they are wobbling, the opposing muscles are trying to grab what the other one's not doing, and they're sort of they're imbalanced between each other, and they're trying to catch after the fact. So what we want to be able to get is that level hip and shoulder. What we can then do is progress that by then going through the reps, because what we're doing then is when we come up and holding, we're just asking the muscles to come up once and hold. When we start doing alternating reps, like so, what we're now asking the muscles to do is switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off, switch on, and change the sides at which is being heightened and which is being dampened. So we got to think about keeping that level hip throughout those two progressions of the exercise. The other important part to the bird dog is sweeping the floor. So what that means is when we lift the knee up, we don't lift it up. What we do is we push the heel into that position, and that maintains the position of the spine. Because once we've got that position of the spine and the hips and shoulders are level, what we've got there is a stable spine, a stable hip, and a stable shoulder. Component 2 is endurance. So with regards to endurance, we can use the bird dog. As I described, we are building a degree of endurance because we lift up and we hold. So we may hold that for 10 seconds each side, 20 seconds each side, 30 seconds each side, whatever that may be. So we build that will build a degree of endurance along with the stability that I was talking about. But what we also want to do is build endurance through the rest of the torso. So we would want to build endurance in the anterior musculature using a plank. We would also want to build endurance through the lateral musculature using the side plank. What we can also do is access more of the glute min and glute med by simply just lifting a foot up. And again, we can gain stability out of this one as well, because if we lift up and our hips drop, that's showing us that those muscles aren't switching on or heightening their activity at the right time. So we need to have, again, level hips to show that the muscles are doing their job properly. And then we've got the endurance of being able to hold that for a longer period of time whilst resisting fatigue. So the first two stages that we need to build is first stability and endurance. If we can build those two, what that then allows us to do is start to move on to more strength-based type exercises. So what we're not just doing is we're not just building the lower back muscles. What we're trying to do first is we're trying to get the muscles to turn on and off at the right time. Then we're trying to get them to work for a long period of time so they resist fatigue. What we're also trying to do is get more muscles working, because if we can get more muscles working and at the same level as all the other muscles, then all the load is going to be spread out around the torso. So it's not going to be all focused into the lower back, which is eventually going to cause us a problem. So once we can start to do that, then we're starting to rebuild our lower back. So strength isn't the key, it comes later. And in part 3, I'm going to add a little bit more onto what I was talking about, and we want to build the posterior chain. So I've talked about building around the abdominals, building around into the side plank, glute min, glute med. What we now need to do is build the posterior chain, and the posterior chain, you could say, well, technically the posterior chain is all the muscles that go all the way up. But what we're going to focus on is glutes, what's known as the thoracolumbar fascia, and we've also got the lats involved as well, and longissimus iliocostalis of the mid-back as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the bird dog for this exercise. Now, why do we want to build this whole posterior chain? Well, the thoracolumbar fascia is a diamond-shaped tissue that sits from the sort of the middle part of the back, comes out as a diamond, and then goes down into where the sacrum is. So we've got this diamond. What happens there, that's where the two glute muscles join in and the two latissimus dorsi join in. Now if we activate all those muscles, it pulls it and makes that thoracolumbar fascia taut. Now because the thoracolumbar fascia attaches to each of the lumbar vertebrae, it's as if it's holding it in place. And because it's stiffened, it can't move. So that will give stability to the lower back. And it's the same with longissimus and iliocostalis. So I'm going to start by showing you the bird dog, because when we lift the leg, we activate this glute, which is going to pull on this side of the thoracolumbar fascia. When we lift this arm and turn it and activate the lats, we're then pulling on the opposing side. So what we're doing is we're pulling on that right to left, and then left to right, right to left, left to right. So again, we're building tension into that area to stabilize the spine. When we also lift one of the arms up, like so, we bring more activity to longissimus and iliocostalis, which come down the mid-back into the lower back, and essentially they hold it up. So we've got longissimus and iliocostalis holding the lower back up. We've also got the thoracolumbar fascia holding the lower back up, again stabilizing the area. If we want to access glutes more, we can come down into a bridge, and what we can do is come into this position and squeeze glutes. So again, we're pulling down. If we want to get the lats involved, we can push the elbows into the floor, and that will activate the lats more. So what we're starting to do is build all the way around the torso with an added emphasis on the lower back, but we're not just building the lower back, we're building above it and we're building below it, so that section in the middle gets held in place. So component number 3 is we want to build the whole posterior chain. The final component is then strength. Now, why is strength the final component, and what is strength? Well, strength is the body's ability to tolerate load. And what I mean by load is weight. So this could be a barbell, a 20 kilo barbell, and then I could add weights on either side to make it heavier. So what I would do is I would have that on the floor, and then I would lift it up off the floor. Now, when I come into this position, I maintain the position of the spine, and then as I lift, the lower back has to stay in position. So the amount of load that can tolerate is how strong it is. But strength is 1 rep to say 6 reps. As we move on beyond that, we then start to move into the endurance end of the spectrum. So what we want to be able to do is build strength into it. We could also have a bar on the back and go into a good morning, because like the bird dog, when we lift the arm up, what we've got is the chest, where the weight is the lever, and then the low back has to hold that in position. So we can go through the good morning exercise like so, again building additional strength into it as we add more load on, and our ability to tolerate that load. So we then start moving into more traditional strength exercises. But again, if we're building strength, it needs to be done in a way where we build the strength and then we can build the endurance on the top of that. But all the way, we're trying to build the endurance in like the strength and the stability are like the bricks of the house, but the endurance is the cement that sort of binds it all together. So we need the endurance to go with the strength, and then we need the endurance to go with the stability as well, because it's the endurance that resists fatigue, and it's the resisting of fatigue that enhances the health and the fitness of the lower back. So to quickly summarize, we need to build stability and then endurance. We need to build the whole posterior chain. We need to build the rest of the core with an emphasis on that lower back and the posterior chain. And then what that allows us to do is then build the strength on top of that. So as I mentioned at the start, if you want to rebuild your lower back, you want to do it in a way like this, then please do click the link below and go through to my How to Build Strength Endurance 12-week program. If you've liked the content, please do hit the like button. If you've learned something new, please do hit the thanks button. If you've got a comment or a question, please do leave it below. And finally, if you want to watch more tutorials like this, please do hit the subscribe button and the bell icon.